besides covering conventions, one of my one of my favorite things to cover is inter-party primaries. And one that we've got in the North Carolina Republican Party that's starting to really bubble up is the race for who is going to replace Richard Burr in the U.S. Senate. Now, immediately after the conclusion of the last election in 2020, it seems, Mark Walker, the former congressman in the Greensboro area, decided to announce that he was going to run for U.S. Senate in 2022. There was also a lot of speculation that Mark Walker was going to run for Senate in 2020 and actually take on Tom Tillis in a Republican inter-party primary. Especially after at a county convention he accused Tom Tillis of being a weak-knee senator because Tom Tillis had originally opposed the construction of the southern border wall. Now, Mark Walker, my opinion, as a candidate, he would be okay, not great. Mark Walker's, if you look up his voting record, his voting score through Heritage Foundation or Conservative Review, and even the more establishment American Conservative Union, he generally scores in the low 80s. So he's a B- Republican voter, which is pretty good because unfortunately there are a lot of Republicans who are C, D, or even F voting records in Congress. But I will tell you that there's been some finagling by our good friends, the Republican establishment, that should send some alarm bells about supporting Mark Walker. And I have this piece here from the Daily Haymaker, and I'm saying that there have been fundraising letters hidden mailboxes and email boxes that have been signed by former Speaker of the House. This is the U.S. House, former U.S. House Speaker Paul Ryan. Now, Paul Ryan, you think the first thing I wanted to believe about Paul Ryan that he was this rising star in the Republican Party. He was very, very effective, in my opinion, at getting his argument against Obamacare back when they were debating Obamacare now, which is over 10 years ago now. And then he got picked as Mitt Romney's running mate for the 2012 election. Now, backtrack a little bit. My first kind of crack that Paul Ryan is maybe not the best person in the world is that he, in the Wisconsin primary, which is a very consequential primary in the GOP usually. Okay, in the Wisconsin primary, Paul Ryan endorsed Mitt Romney over Rick Santorum. Now, Paul Ryan had the opportunity, he could have endorsed Rick Santorum, the more conservative candidate, the more effective Republican, at least in my opinion. He could have done that, and that would really help Rick Santorum, and he might have even been the Republican nominee, and he probably would have won the election against Obama, I believe. But no, Paul Ryan decided to support Mitt Romney. Of course, that paid off because Mitt Romney picked Paul Ryan as a VP, as his VP. Unfortunately, though, Paul Ryan was very weak in the debate against then Vice President Joe Biden in 2012. Now, it's interesting to note that Ryan presided over the decline and the fall of the GOP majority in the United States House. The Republicans had took the House back in 2010. Ryan, of course, Boehner was Speaker, and then Boehner retired. And then in 2018, Paul Ryan was Speaker of the House. The GOP lost control in the 2018 election. So instead of staying and fighting to take it back, Ryan tucked his tail and fled Capitol Hill and retired from Congress at the age of 48. When most people are just making it to Congress, Paul Ryan is actually retiring. And let's see. And it should be noted that Ryan was openly anti-Trump during the last 4 years. Again, this is from Daily Haymaker. Then Mark Walker was a Greensboro preacher who got elected to fill the big shoes of longtime Congressman Howard Coble. Walker talked a good conservative game. He promised his soon-to-be constituents that his first official act on the Hill would be to vote against then Speaker John Boehner. Well, Walker got elected, moved to D.C., and voted for Boehner, lying about his first vote. Okay. And then, of course, he appeared in federally charging documents in a political corruption case. That whole Robin Hayes, Lindbergh case, which if you have any extra time, you want to read about it, go ahead. But Mark Walker, at least in my opinion, very effective speaker. He has done some good things. Still some bad things. I mean, he voted for the removal of naming, voted for the removal of the name of Fort Bragg and some other Air Force, some military bases, voted for the removal of the Confederate statues. But the good thing about Mark Walker is that he has made some inroads with the African American community. He has also sponsored legislation that would help student athletes get paid from the NCAA. Now, let me kind of explain this to you. That student athletes, okay, when a person, most athletes, they get recruited in high school by various colleges. Most of them go on to college because they get on scholarship. So the NCAA pays for their college, their room and board, their books, their meals, etc. But NCAA rules currently stipulate that student athletes cannot make any money. So, they can't have a part-time job or any of that. But the problem, a lot of student athletes are very busy anyway because they're in class and then they're at practice every day, several hours a day. So Mark Walker's trying to get this rule changed to where student athletes can get paid a little bit. But let me see. Anything else I want to say about Mark Walker? Pastor for a long time at Lawndale Baptist Church in Greensboro. And he actually took on a establishment candidate when he ran for Congress back in 2014. The establishment was pouring lots of money for Phil Berger Jr., who's the son of the State Senate President Phil Berger Sr. So the establishment was pulling hard for Phil Berger Jr., but Mark Walker came out of the primary back in 2014 as the victor in this race. Now, fast forward to just last week, here in the middle of April 2021. And guess who decides to jump in the race? Huge secret, not. It was former Governor Pat McCrory. Now, Pat is not as good a candidate as Mark Walker, in my opinion. If the Republicans want to have a hard Senate race, and possibly a race where the Democrats would have a very easy pickup, unfortunately, then Republican voters will vote for Pat McCrory. The problem with Pat McCrory is really there's three issues that the Democrats are going to throw and attack him relentlessly on. And by the way, this is from a piece from Dallas Woodhouse over at Carolina Journal. Okay, the three issues that are going to dog Pat McCrory if he does make it out of the Republican primary. Now, one, of course, is HB 2, the bathroom bill, right? I'm not going to go into details of that, but you know what that is. Personally, I agree with HB 2. I mean, really, it's common sense, but the a lot of Democrats, especially the very liberal Democrats, think it's okay for a man to go in women's bathroom, women to go in man's bathroom, and all this stuff. Crazy. Number two is the I-77 toll lanes. Now, this one may be a little bit outdated now because the toll lanes have been in place for a couple years and people have been using them. They have been effective at traffic congestion, a little bit effective. But the problem there, though, is that the state of North Carolina is locked into a 50-year contract with this foreign agency named Sintra. And the problem with in the 2012 race, McCrory ran for governor in 2008. And only lost by like 3 points. And a very good year for Democrats. 2012 had a very easy Republican primary. Got 85% of the vote back again. But the counties in northern Mecklenburg County, where the I-77 project was slated to happen in 2012, he got like 15 out of 15, but then he lost 5 of the precincts in 2016 after he agreed to let the I-77 construction project begin. And that ran, he lost about 10,000 votes right there. And he lost the governor's race, but the re-election in 2016 by 10,000 votes. Another, and this is probably out of the three the most damning issue, and still an issue that is very relevant, and that is the issue of film incentives, okay? In New Hanover County, which is becoming, it was a Republican-leaning county, which means Republican generally wins by 5 points or less. Now in 2020, a Democrat for president won the candidate first time like over 40 years since Jimmy Carter, and now it's becoming more of a swing county. But back in 2012, Pat McCrory won New Hanover County down in Wilmington, where the film industry is front and center. He won this county by over 5,000 votes. Okay. Then he lost New Hanover County by 5,000 votes in 2016 because he signed onto legislation to roll back the film incentives that were so that helped deliver a lot of work for the film industry. And when you look at the film industry, it's not just the millionaire actors. Okay, it's not just the hotshot executive producers or directors, but it's also the, hey, look, One Tree Hill's filming an episode today. They need extras. You know what? I'm going to go down there for a few hours, be an extra, and make $50. You know, or it's having a furniture company, and you're in charge of set design, and so you go to this local furniture store, and the furniture store makes money because the set designer needs a certain bedroom planned for their set. Okay, now if that movie was not filming in Wilmington, if it was filming in Georgia instead, then Wilmington would be missing out on that local business would be missing out on revenue, right? Okay, so now, what's another way of looking at the Pat McCrory race? Well, what is Tom Tillis going to do? Because Tom Tillis holds a lot of power in this Senate race, because he's a current U.S. Senator. And in the past, him and Pat McCrory have been very close. And now, personally, right now, pretty much all the establishment Republicans in the Charlotte area, I'm sure, have been running to Pat McCrory's side and have been signing up on his website to volunteer, give him money, this and that and this. But Tom Tillis would sort of be that cherry on top of this McCrory sundae in the Republican Party. Another person who holds a lot of clout in this race is Donald Trump. Is his daughter going to run in this race? Right now, you have two lanes that have formed in this Republican primary. One you have is Pat McCrory running as the establishment candidate. That one is very much I'm sure of. But number two lane is the more mainstream Republican. This, okay, if we go back to 2016 in the race for the Republican nomination for president, the establishment person would be Jeb Bush, right? And the mainstream conservative candidate would probably be Marco Rubio. And then when Rubio got out of the race, it was Ted Cruz, the mainstream Republican candidate. There's another lane, though, that is not formed in this race yet. And excuse me, no. Let me go back to the two lanes that have formed already. There are rumors that George Holden, a former congressman for the Raleigh area, might run. And George Holden has he would probably help Pat McCrory. He would help split the vote in the mainstream Republican lane against Mark Walker. Now, let me go to the Trumpian lane, we call this. In the past, I've called this the Tea Party lane. Now we call this the Trumpian lane. There are two schools of thought here. One is that Ted Budd, it has been reported that Ted Budd is seriously or even likely to announce a run for the U.S. Senate seat. If Ted Budd decides to run, I will most certainly, about 98% sure that I would go ahead and endorse him and sign up for his campaign. Because Ted Budd is he's about as reliable as you can get as a conservative Republican. You know, he says what he's going to do. His voting score is like a 97 or a 98 on a scale of 100. He's very, very reliable. And one thing I kind of like about him is I had an opportunity a couple years ago to go up to Washington, D.C. and go to his office. Ted Budd was not there, but went in his office, and the neat thing about his office is that he has a little pull-out bed that he can kind of pull out from the wall, and he sleeps in his office, which I thought was kind of blue collar, because there are a lot of members of Congress that just, have apartments in D.C. which are very expensive, or even book long-term hotel rooms, which are also very expensive. But Ted Budd, no. Ted Budd is blue collar all the way. He also, he's a small business owner. He's not one of these attorneys. Oh my gosh. He owns a gun store down in Advance, which is between Winston-Salem and Statesville, as you get into the foothills of North Carolina, or the real country part of North Carolina, as I like to call it. But there's another candidate who also might run, and he's definitely also in that Trumpian lane, and that would be current Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, the great Mark Robinson. Now, as soon as it was reported last week that Mark Robinson is seriously considering a run for U.S. Senate, I started reading and hearing the excuse birds in the GOP. They're like, "Oh no, Mark, don't do it. Mark, you should be governor." Or Mark, the best one was by one of the radio hosts who said, "Mark, you've been in office for like 3 months, and now you're going to turn around again and run for U.S. Senate." Now, my thinking is that, what's the national debt now? It's like close to $30 trillion, right? And it just, Joe Biden's been in office for, what? A little less than, just about 3 months now. And he's already added, $5 trillion to the debt? And wants to add another $5 trillion. When is enough going to be enough? And the problem was that when the Republicans won back control of the Senate for the Democrats in 2014, they were expected to fight against Obama, and they didn't really do that. Now, there were a few like Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, a few who actually, gave a damn about the deficit and tried to hold the line. But the reality is, most of the Republicans against Obama, they just fell right on over, And I'm thinking that Ted Budd or Mark Robinson would actually fight, and say enough is enough with the deficit. Stop it, Now here's the thing. I don't like to call myself a Trumpian conservative, but as a anti-establishment conservative, I want one or the other in the primary. I do not want Ted Budd and Mark Walker running, both in the race. But I don't think it's going to happen, because I read a news report that Mark Robinson is very close with Ted Budd, vice versa. They have a very good friendship. One of the two is probably, hopefully, most likely going to run, but not both. Because both run, you're going to split the Trumpian conservative vote, and McCordy's going to win the race in a cakewalk. And by the way, North Carolina election law, in a inter-party primary, you just need 30%. Crazy. Too low of a number in my opinion. They need to go back to at least 40% or even 50%. And I love runoffs in an inter-party primary, because in my opinion, it really helps to solidify the whole party support around a candidate, because too oftentimes you have a divided party that not everybody will want to get behind the nominee in a general election. But if you have at least 2 elections in an inter-party primary, it helps. Now, I used to like runoffs in a general election until what happened in Georgia, because what happened in the U.S. Senate race in Georgia, David Perdue won the first election by like close to 100,000 votes. But he did not get 50% of the vote in the general election, so it went to a January runoff, and the knucklehead Ossoff won. So there was like a lot of Republicans that didn't bother to show up, unfortunately, back in January. But so we'll see what happens with this U.S. Senate race. I tell you though, it's going to be fun at the Republicans, the North Carolina Republican convention this June, to see. I have a feeling I know what candidates are going to get the loudest applause and the loudest non-applause. Another thing about, I just thought about McCory. You talk about Eastern North Carolina. He also put some regulations, some not very nice regulations against the fishing community down east. Excuse me, losing my voice a little bit. But yeah, so probably what I see kind of happening here is Ted Budd is the congressman in District 13. District 13 is having their annual convention this Saturday, April 24th. So if Ted Budd is going to have a great opportunity to announce he's running for U.S. Senate at that convention. If he does not, though, that does open the door for Mark Robinson to make a run for the U.S. Senate. Mark Robinson has set a deadline of April 30th, and then we will actually know his decision. So Ted Budd might announce at the district convention this Saturday, or he might hold off and make his official announcement at the state convention coming up in the first weekend in June, which I have a little preview video hopefully up within a couple days on that. But for now, this is the Conservative Pelican. Y'all have a great day now. Bye-bye.